Hey everyone, my name's Andy. I'm a Salesforce admin, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about creating a loop in a flow and working with collection variables. So let's say in this scenario, whenever we set an account to inactive by unchecking this isActive box, we want two things to happen. One, we want to create a new task on all the related contacts to remind the owners to reparent them to an active account. Then we want to set all of the related opportunities to close lost. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Flow Builder, choose record triggered flow. Okay. Our object is going to be account. And then we want to trigger the flow when the account is updated. And then we're going to set an entry condition, right? Because we don't want this to trigger every time the account's updated. We only care about when the isActive field equals false, right? Or is unchecked. And then when do we want to run the flow? We only want to run it when the record is updated to meet the condition requirements, right? Optimize the flow for, we're just going to keep this as is and hit done. Okay, so now we're going to get all the related contacts. So we're going to get this get records node. And we're going to say get related contacts. I have a lot of content in this video, so I'm not going to do descriptions for every one of these, but highly recommended. Please put descriptions all the time when you can. Okay. Object is going to be contact. And then how are we going to find these contact records? So we want contacts whose account ID equals the account that triggers the flow. Okay. And we can get that ID by going to record ID, right? Record is just the record that triggered the flow. And then how many records to store? All of them, right? We don't want just one, we want both of them. And hit done. Okay, so now we have a collection of contacts. So before we go into our loop, I'm going to hop over to this little diagram first and kind of talk about it before we dive in. So to break it down, we're going to start with our collection of contacts, right? And then one at a time, they're going to enter this loop, and then we're going to set the values for the new task, okay? Now, why do we care about a collection of contacts if we're setting values for a new task? Because on a task, there's a field called name, right? And we can use this field to relate this task to a new contact. So this way we can ensure that for each contact that enters this loop, we can get that ID, and we can set that ID as the name field value for the new task, right? That way relating it to that contact. Okay, so we're going to set all the values for that new task. And then we're going to add this new task record to a list, but we're not going to commit it or insert it to the database yet, right? We're just adding it to a list. Go back to the loop, second item comes in, set the values for the task, add to the list. And then after it's all done, outside the loop, we're going to insert all the new tasks from the list. So the reason that we are doing this in this order is because there's two things you should never do inside of a loop, okay? That's a SOQL query and a DML statement. A DML statement is like insert, update, delete, right? And the reason being is that there are governor limits, okay? So we can only do, let's say, 150 DML statements, right? We can only have 100 SOQL queries within our automation. And the reason being is that if we exceed this, right, we exceed these governor limits, we get thrown errors and our flows will fail, okay? So we have our SOQL query outside. We're running one SOQL query to get all of the contacts. And then we are running one DML statement to insert all the tasks. Even though there's two tasks in there, it's one insert, right? As opposed to, let's say we had an account that had 151 contacts. Our limit is 150 DML statements. If we were doing an insert of new tasks inside this loop, we would be creating 151 new tasks, right? And then our flow would fail, as opposed to 151 tasks getting added to a list, and then that list inserting one time, and it would be okay, right? So in our flow builder, we're going to go hop back over here, and we're going to add an element, and we're going to add a loop, okay? So we're just going to say loop through contacts. Okay, our collection variable is going to be that collection of related contacts. And then this doesn't really matter in our scenario, but we're just going to keep it as it is. Run from first item to last. So we're going to hit done. Okay, so for each, we're going to start by assigning the values of this new task record. So we're going to come down to assignment. We're going to say assign new task values. And we're going to create a new variable. So we're going to choose add new resource. We're going to choose variable. Let's just call this new task. And our data type is going to be record. It'll be task record. Okay, hit done. Okay, so now we can start assigning values to this new task record field, right? So new task, that's the record. And we'll say subject, okay? So we can just start plugging in these field values. So we'll call this reparent to new account as the subject, right? We have a due date. I'll just make it tomorrow. Okay. We have the name, right? This is going to be the contact. This is how we can relate this task to this contact. So to do that, we can choose this option, current item from loop, right? This is going to be the current contact that is entering this loop. And then we'll say ID, contact ID, right? Same thing, we want to set the assigned to, or the owner of this task. We're just going to make it the owner of the contact. So for the current contact that's in the loop, owner, okay? And then the last one is the status. Okay, not started, right? So by choosing current item in the loop, right, we're going to be dynamically setting these values for each contact that enters this loop. So hit done, okay? Now we're going to use another assignment. We're going to call this, we'll say add task to list, okay? Now we're going to create a new variable again, add new resource, variable. We'll call this new task list. Again, it's going to be a record data type, and our object will be task again. But we're going to choose allow multiple values because we're going to be adding these task records to this list, right? So for operator, we're going to change equals to add, and we want to add new task, right? That's that variable that we just set all the field values for. Done, okay? So now we're going to be continually adding these new task records. Now, after the last, we've exited this loop. Now we're going to do our insert of all of these new tasks. So create records. We'll say insert new tasks. How many to create? Multiple. And it's going to ask us for a record collection, which will be our new task list. Hit done. Okay. And then the last thing we have to do is we're going to update all of the related opportunities stage to close lost. So it's a kind of a cool feature. All we have to do is do update records, okay? And we're just going to say update related ops, right? And there's an option here, update records related to the account record. Records related to account, we choose account, and then we can just type in opportunities, right? And as long as we're just setting all the values the same, right? I mean, we can filter out certain ones, but this is just a really easy way to just kind of mass update all of these opportunities. We want the close lost, or the stage name rather, to be close lost. Hit done. Okay, so a quick recap, right? This flow is going to trigger when an account record is updated and the is active field is set to false, or it's unchecked, right? It's going to get all the related contacts outside of the loop, right? So we don't exceed those SOQL query limits. Then it's going to loop through all of those contacts. It's going to assign or create, right, a new task record, but it's not going to insert it. It's just going to create it and assign those values. It's going to assign the contact ID, right, and it's going to assign the contact owner as well to this task, so it relates it to the contact. Then it's going to add this new task record to a list, and then after it's all done, after both of them have been through, it's going to come down here, and we're going to insert these new tasks from this list, right? So we're using one DML statement. We're not exceeding any limits. And then we're just going to do an update on the related opportunities and setting all of them to close lost. So we'll save, We'll just call this account flow. Save. Okay, we're going to activate it, and then we're going to test it. So I'm just going to refresh. Okay, so let's set this to uncheck, save. Okay, so we can see that there are tasks now, right, assigned to these contacts. The tasks on contacts will roll up to accounts. That's why we can see it there. So I'm going to come over here to the contacts. Let's take a look at them. And there we are. We have our new task, right? Repair it to new account. We can see that its status is not started. The name, right, is the contact. It's assigned to the contact owner. Due date set, subject set. And if I come over here to the other contact, same thing. Its contact is set, and the assigned to is the contact owner. And then we can also see on the household that all of the opportunities are now closed lost. And that's it. That is creating a loop and a flow and working with collection variables. Thanks for watching.